Feeling exhausted and foggy no matter how much you sleep? What if the problem is something invisible, but your body feels it 24/7? But you've been blaming your body. You've been blaming your health. You've tried everything. But what if the issue is not inside your body, but in your environment? Electrosmog, or electromagnetic radiation, can be an unseen force quietly overwhelming your system. It turns out, many people are far more sensitive to electromagnetic radiation, EMR, than they realize. Here are some other signs commonly associated with prolonged exposure to electrosmog: trouble falling or staying asleep, unexplained headaches or constant pressure or body aches, unexplained low mood or irritability, hard to concentrate or focus, brain fog or memory issues, unexplained rashes, tingling or skin sensitivity, digestive discomfort like bloating or constipation, dizziness or feeling off balance. Many people silently suffer, blaming stress, their bad luck, or their lifestyle, but in reality, they may be reacting to something invisible that surrounds them 24/7. Electrosmog can come from anything powered by electricity or battery. The mobile phones, yours and others all around you, LED lighting, TVs, air conditioners, smart home systems, smart meters, all other electrical equipment, and even the radiation emitted from cars while traveling in vehicles or surrounded by traffic. Here's the tricky part. There's no standard tests to detect it, and symptoms often mimic other conditions. That's why it's often overlooked. That's why most healthcare experts miss it. And you're left blaming your stress, your health, or your age. You're not imagining it. You're not alone. But maybe the answer isn't another pill, another online course, or another exercise program. What if your breakthrough is finally here? What if there is an award-winning plug-and-play solution that can harmonize this silent and invisible harm? The kind that may be affecting your sleep, mood, focus, and overall well-being. To learn how others are turning their lives around, by addressing something they couldn't see but definitely felt.
The title of my talk is Stop Cooking Your Kid's Brain. Okay, and how to protect your family with the harmful effects of radiation. Because of technology, of everything that's happening, in 2007, according to European research, the EMF levels soared to astonishing 3,000%. 3,000, and that was a 2007 study. This is from Professor Johansson in 2012. He actually discovered or done the research that the background levels of electromagnetic radiation has actually increased to 1 quadrillion times. When I was writing it, I'm checking how many zeros do I need to put. And what year is it? 2014. What year is now? And that's 10 years. Imagine how much is it right now. I can't even imagine. According to statistics, 8 billion mobile phones, and we have more than 20 billion wireless transmitting devices. Imagine we are in this electromagnetic jungle. So how does exactly EMF affect us? And are there long-term effects? Dr. Ole Johansson, EMS has other mechanisms. First, it can cause DNA damage. DNA damage can actually lead to mutation and cancer. Another one, it can cause inflammatory response. Another one, it disrupts cellular signaling. What does it mean? It actually decreases your immune system. Okay? Oxidative stress. Who's familiar with oxidative stress? Yes. EMF can actually cause oxidation, more free radicals. And another thing, it also decreases melatonin. That's the reason why so many people right now cannot sleep. And I was shocked that there is a medicine they call melatonin for kids. I stop and think, oh, melatonin kids, it only means they already have a market for that. The kids are not sleeping anymore, right? And the autism actually rose from year 2000 to now by 317%. And EMF has been implicated in that.
The one that we're really concerned about is this one with the young child. And this is a 3-year-old brain that we modeled. And you see that by the end of that 6-minute call, the peak radiation, yellow and red, is getting all the way into almost both eyes.
How many of you here knows someone who is a 3-year-old? How many minutes is this? In a 6-minute call. As you can see, the red is the one the radiation is reaching far into the brain. Right? Are you scared for your kids right now? Yes? The question is, how many minutes are they actually spending right now? Is it still 6 minutes? How many? 6 hours? So, what do you think is happening to their brains? It's being cooked, right? It's being cooked. They actually found out that those tumor grows on the side where they put their phone. If the person is right-handed, the tumor is on the right. If the person is left-handed, the tumor is on the left. And even American Academy of Pediatrics actually wrote to Congressman Dennis Kunich in 2012. They're actually appealing, please, the children are disproportionately affected because their bone density, the amount of liquid in the child's brain, and the absorption is too high. They are appealing to please make new standards. But did they adjust? No. That's 2012.
The world has been kept in the dark, blind to the real danger of EMF or the extent of the danger. This is not because the threat isn't real or that the evidence does not exist, but because the truth has been silenced and buried behind smoke screens and mirrors by the communication industry. This powerful industry, estimated to be much more powerful than Big Pharma, has cloaked the truth behind false assurances and silenced those who dare to expose it. The danger is real, but the truth has been suppressed, dismissed, and hidden behind a wall of denial. The danger of electromagnetic radiation is of an unfathomable scale, far beyond what we dare to estimate. We invite you to form your opinion, only after you have heard from all the experts in this presentation. Every moment we stay unaware and stay unprotected, the risk grows.
The children's brain, like the hypothalamus, it tends to absorb 1.5 to 2 times more electromagnetic fields than an adult. But if you look at the child's bone marrow, it absorbs an amazing 10 times more electromagnetic radiation than an adult. The brain is much more absorbent, the skull is thinner, and because the relative size is smaller, if I give you the same dosage, your smaller tissue is going to absorb more than the bigger tissue. You could use electromagnetic field harmonizers, which will balance out the radiation side effects from the appliance.
Now, researchers took a comprehensive look at stats from 46 different studies from around the world, and it found the use of cell phones for more than 1,000 hours, or about 17 minutes a day over a 10-year period, increased the risk of tumors by 60%. Joel Moskowitz conducted that study. He is a researcher at Cal's School of Public Health and director of Berkeley's Center for Family and Community Health.
Now, I want to show you what's been diagnosed in Korea recently. Digital dementia has been diagnosed in children. It involves memory problems, difficulty handwriting, difficulty looking you in the eye, difficulty developing empathy, and it's a diagnosed brain condition confirmed by MRI scans of these children. This is the future of the brains of the world's children. The hemisphere of the brain, that the right hemisphere, which is what allows us to be empathic and to understand things, is underdeveloped. And it's such a concern that the Korean government has issued warnings.
There's growing evidence on effects on the brain of adolescents.
studies were done into the brain of about 900 adolescents between the ages of 12 and 17, finding statistically significant decreases in their ability to remember things. This replicated findings from an earlier study. So remember, we showed in animals an effect on the hippocampus. The hippocampus is involved in memory. This is another study showing effects on neuronal ion channels. And these are channels. The brain, of course, is full of chemicals, and they're communicating all the time. But if you can interfere with them with electromagnetic fields, which is evident from the studies that have been done, this will have an effect on the capacity to remember, on the capacity to function. But look at the exposure here of the mother and the child. And that baby's brain is not completely closed. The skull is not completely closed over it. The brain contains fluid. This is exactly the kind of exposure we want to avoid. Studies in adults have shown fewer hippocampal granular cells in newborn rats. Newborn rats exposed prenatally have fewer cells in their hippocampus, more damage into those. And this is the studies of my colleagues in Turkey, Odachi, who unfortunately died recently, Suleiman Kaplan, and many others. And behavioral problems have been shown in humans before and after cell phone use. Of course, studies from Hugh Taylor in Yale have shown hyperactivity in animals, and we now are seeing it in children with higher prenatal exposures. And the brain images here are, I think, quite stunning. This is the control animal, and here you see the exposed. Literally the same slice. There are fewer brain cells. Their cell walls are damaged. This is clearly evidence experimentally for what we are seeing in people.
Professor Emerita at Trent University. In Canada, Dr. Magda Harvest, whose experience lies in the biological effects of electromagnetic radiation.
If it was a real problem, I would know. If it was a real problem, the government would protect us. How come I'm not hearing about this? They're all things I've heard when I give seminars. You know, I get up there and they say, oh yeah, if this was really a problem, they would have told us. I am they. I am a, legitimate scientist, and I am telling you.
To the United Nations and the World Health Organization, and is now signed. This appeal has been signed by 247 scientists in 42 nations, all of whom have published peer-reviewed EMF papers in science journals reporting biological and health effects at levels far below national and international standards. And so this is not hyperbole, this is not hypothetical, this is data.
There, and I do research on both the harmful effects of electromagnetic pollution. Electrosmog is a form of air pollution, and just like we have the Los Angeles smog that we can see on occasion, with electromagnetic radiation, because you can't see it, people think that it doesn't exist. We have sources within the home that produce electrosmog, and we have sources outside the home that produce electrosmog. And these outside the home sources actually penetrate brick. That's why you can use your cell phone indoors. So it actually comes through the walls, the windows, the ceiling in your home. There are different sources of electrosmog: cell towers, cell phones, Bluetooth, cordless phones, wireless baby monitors, Wi-Fi, and the paraphernalia that goes with them, as well as smart meters. All of these emit microwave radiation. And the more of this technology that you have in your home, the higher your exposure, and the more likely that you will eventually become ill from the radiation. Low frequency electromagnetic fields. Here it's primarily from power lines, wiring in your home, and electric equipment. And what's been associated with this in the literature is primarily childhood cancer, particularly leukemias and lymphomas and brain tumors in children. We then have radio frequency microwave radiation, and this is from wireless technology. And finally, there's something called dirty electricity, and this comes from electronic devices and is biologically active. Our exposure to electromagnetic pollution has increased dramatically, and one of the best ways for me to show this is to look at the deployment of Wi-Fi. And you can see in this particular graph little purple dots for the United States. And those are areas that have Wi-Fi transmitters. Most of them are universities, government institutions, military locations. And that was in 2002, so you can see there's really very little Wi-Fi back in 2002. This is what it looks like in 2018, so just last year. We've moved from very little to blanketing wireless radiation through Wi-Fi in just a period of 16 years, which is really very disturbing. At the same time, we have an increase in chronic illnesses. Many of the ones that we have listed here, actually every single one of the ones I have listed here has been associated with electromagnetic exposure. The bioeffects of electromagnetic fields, they fall into three basic categories. One is cancer, the other is reproductive problems, and the third are neurological problems that we collectively call electrohypersensitivity, or EHS. I'm going to start with reproduction. There have been now about 24 different studies showing that cell phone radiation affects sperm. So the men in the audience really shouldn't keep their cell phones in their pocket, because that cell phone is giving out a signal every few minutes connecting with a tower, and that's exposing your genital area to microwave radiation. But I'm going to show you live sperm and how it's affected by 2.4 gigahertz frequency, which is the same frequency we use for Wi-Fi. The top two slides there are controlled conditions, so there's no RF exposure. The bottom two slides are exposed. And in the top, this is after 1 hour after the sperm was released. You can see that they're moving around a little confused because they don't know where to go. They're on a glass plate right now. At the bottom, this is 1 hour exposure after irradiating them with 2.4 gigahertz frequencies. And then on the right, 5 hours later. And I think one of the things you can see is in the bottom right slide, those sperm aren't doing well at all. And that's only after 5 hours of exposure to 2.4 gigahertz, which is Wi-Fi. Anyone who has a laptop computer on their lap in Wi-Fi mode, keeps the cell phone in their pocket, is likely to damage sperm. One of the primary concerns is that laptop on Wi-Fi in your pocket, because you're going to have it there for a long period of time. And every time it's downloading or uploading information, it's emitting microwave radiation. Now, women have been born with all the eggs they'll ever produce. So if you damage the eggs, you've damaged that woman's ability to reproduce. Some very disturbing information came out. This is a study that was published in 2008, and it was picked up by the Independent newspaper in the United Kingdom. Jeffrey Lane is a really good reporter who's reported on this a number of times. And you can see here a pregnant woman who's got a laptop in Wi-Fi mode, and she's also talking on her cell phone. And that's potentially affecting the fetus. And what the results of this particular study show is that the offspring from women who are exposed to this radiation, they have emotional difficulties, inattention, hyperactivity, and problems with peers that begin to be noticed when they're about 6 or 7 years of age. And we know that there are so many children now who have attention deficit disorder, attention hyperactivity disorder, and including autism. And there's research showing that at least part of the increase in autism could be due to microwave radiation. A society that doesn't protect its children doesn't have a future. And we're doing a really bad job protecting our children. They're coming down with cancers at an earlier age. They have all sorts of learning disabilities. Students in school are incredibly anxious. I have a lot of teacher friends who tell me that, and certainly at the university where I was teaching, the anxiety level among the student population has grown enormously. So that's about reproduction. The next topic I'd like to cover is cancer. Now, the cell phone industry, I think, is very much aware of this. And so what they've done is they have fine print where they tell you to keep the cell phone away from your body. Now, the print is so fine that I can't actually read it without a magnifying glass, but that's an increase in size so you can see. And a lot of the manufacturers do this. Now, this should be good news, except most people don't recognize that this is what they're saying. And unfortunately, when it comes to lawsuits, they now have the ability to say in court, did you use the cell phone the way it's recommended? Did you ever hold it against your head? And if they say they had, then basically they can get away with it because they said, well, we warned you not to. So this is sort of a double-edged sword. California Department of Public Health in 2014 was legally compelled to release information on cell phones. So a lot of the information that's available through government agencies and health agencies has been suppressed. It's not being released. Some of the agencies like the EPA, they've lost the researchers they have that are doing this kind of research. And a lot of the agencies like the Federal Communication Commission that's responsible for setting guidelines is really a captured agency. The people who are running the FCC are the same people who are running the wireless telecom industry. So they're not there to protect public health, they're there to protect the industry. Now, this is a paper that was just recently published, 2018, by Alistair Phillips. Now, if you look at the data that they present, they show the top graph where those are all malignant brain tumors, and you can see, if anything, perhaps a very slight increase. The red one, the glioblastoma multiforme, which is primarily the grade 4 tumor, they're increasing. And it's this particular tumor that was picked up in rats. This is the tumor that's reportedly documented in studies of cell phone users. So one type of tumor, glioblastoma multiforme, is increasing dramatically. This is also from the same paper in the United Kingdom. And here you can see the solid line are frontal and temporal lobe glioblastoma multiforme. And that's the only one that's really increasing. So the temporal lobe, which is here, and the frontal lobe, which is here, gets the highest radiation when you hold a cell phone next to your head. Very often the studies are showing ipsilateral tumors, which means the tumor on the same side of your head that you hold the cell phone. In California, there are 3 cancer registries. All 3 of them are showing an increase in glioblastoma multiforme during roughly the same time period, and they're finding it's primarily in the temporal and frontal lobe. So once you start dissecting the data, then it really supports the concept that cell phones cause cancer. The last health effect I'd like to talk about is electrohypersensitivity, and I just recently published a paper. It just came out 2 weeks ago, and it's called Electrohypersensitivity is an environmentally induced disability that requires immediate attention. And so we're really trying to get the world to recognize this as a problem, and certainly for doctors to recognize this as a problem, because they're having patients come to them who have a really weird set of symptoms, and many of the doctors just can't figure out what the problem is. Medication they give to these patients to get rid of their symptoms, whether it's a sleeping pill to help them sleep or a painkiller or some anti-anxiety, antidepressant medicine, isn't doing its job. These are the typical symptoms of electrohypersensitivity, and the ones that I have in the red box are the types of symptoms we develop as we age. And so I actually call it rapid aging syndrome. And very often when you talk to someone who has these symptoms, who doesn't believe they're electrically hypersensitive, come back and say, well, I'm just getting older, and it's common for older people not to be able to sleep, to have body aches and pains. But when these individuals go into an electromagnetically clean environment and stay there for a few days, a lot of those symptoms will disappear. So this isn't real aging, it's rapid aging. I've done research with people who are electrically hypersensitive, mostly because I'm trying to figure out how to diagnose them and share that information with medical doctors. And we've come up with a few diagnostics. I'm going to talk about the blood. This is my blood. And this is in an environment that's relatively electromagnetically clean. I don't have wireless technology in my home or in my lab. And this is what happens to my blood when I'm exposed to Wi-Fi for just 10 minutes. It's just after a very short period of exposure, my blood cells are sticking together. This is called rouleau formation, and it prevents the blood from circulating properly, obviously, because it's coagulating a little bit. There's problems with oxygen transport and waste removal from cells. Some of the symptoms for people who have this are headaches and fatigue, difficulty concentrating, numbness, tingling in extremities, heart and blood pressure problems, and in very severe cases, you can end up with a heart attack or a stroke if this is what happens to your blood and you have thin blood vessels.
After hearing about all these health problems, I'm a bit concerned about myself, and I'm curious to know what my red blood cells could actually look like.
Yeah, we have a simple prick test and we can actually analyze the red blood cells.
Okay,
let's do that.
Let's go. Being always on the phone and my laptop for work and learning about the health effects of EMR is beginning to worry me. So let's find out what my results of my blood test are, as suggested by Dr. Rowland.
So what we can see here are red blood cells. We can see red blood cells, they are very translucent and they don't have a nucleus. And we can see beautifully the red blood cells moving around in the matrix. So my question to you is, how long since you were away from your phone?
I think about 40 minutes maybe.
That seems not your kind of reality.
Oh no, I'm on my phone all the time.
Okay, so what we can do is, you get on your phone for maybe close to about half an hour, holding it, and then we'll check again and see how does the capillary blood look like.
Would just 30 minutes of cell phone usage really do any harm at all to my body? I hope not. Let's find out.
Okay, let's have a look. So you can see all the cells now being stacked. See, all of them are, you cannot see those loose cells. You can see most of the cells now all stacked.
Clumped up together, right?
Exactly. Just look at that. The big message is always to try to reduce our exposure. It's almost impossible not to use, but try to be a bit more cautious in the usage.
The thing is, I know you say it's better to reduce. It's impossible for somebody like me, and I'm sure there's lots of people out there that also need to be holding their phones. So, is there anything I can do?
This is the device that can actually help harmonize your electromagnetic frequency wave. And you want to see how it works?
Sure.
Come. See how much of exposure is going. Can you see the exposure to your phone?
Yeah.
It's high, right?
Yeah.
You can see the laptop and all still are having a lot of exposure. So I'm going to turn this on.
Wow.
No exposure.
It's zero.
Yeah, exactly.
With the environment harmonizer turned on beside me, Dr. Rowland and I proceeded to do a third blood test to see just how well this technology supposedly suppresses EMR. Okay, so this looks completely different to the last test, doesn't it?
Yep. Clearly looks different, lesser rouleau formation.
Okay, well thank you so much for introducing me not only into the health factors we need to be aware of when it comes to using devices, but also thank you for showing me a solution that can eliminate that.
What if I told you your greatest health risk might already be flowing through your veins? Most people have never heard of it, but millions live with it every day without knowing. Inside your bloodstream, millions of red blood cells are designed to glide freely, delivering life-giving oxygen to every organ, every muscle, every brain cell. Your blood, the river of life, is meant to flow freely. But sometimes these red blood cells, instead of staying separate, begin sticking together, forming long stacks, like coins piled on top of each other. This is called the rouleau formation. Healthy blood flows like a smooth river, rouleau turns that river into a traffic jam. Rouleau formation is a silent early sign that your body is struggling. The more stacked your red blood cells are, the harder your heart has to work, and the more your body struggles to stay healthy. This silent stacking reduces oxygen, it slows healing, feeds inflammation, and slowly drains your energy. And when this happens, danger follows. When your red blood cells clump together like this, they can't carry oxygen as efficiently. They don't fit through your smallest blood vessels as easily, and your circulation slows down. Your tissues and organs may not get the oxygen and nutrients they need. Your cells starve, your energy fades, and inflammation spreads. Over time, it can contribute to fatigue, brain fog, headaches, and poor healing. The risk of clots, strokes, and heart problems rises. This is silent suffocation at the cellular level, and the silent damage we don't feel until it's too late. But it doesn't stop there. When rouleau formation persists, a dangerous chain reaction begins. 1. Reduced oxygen delivery, hypoxia. Less oxygen reaches your cells, they suffocate. To survive, they shift into abnormal metabolism, known as the Warburg effect, which fuels cancer cell growth. 2. Chronic inflammation. The body reacts to the poor oxygen flow with constant inflammation. Inflammatory chemicals damage healthy cells, increasing mutation risk. 3. Oxidative stress. Free radicals build up, overwhelming your defenses. DNA damage accumulates. Mutations rise. 4. Acidic microenvironment. Waste products build up, pH drops. Cancer cells thrive in low-oxygen acidic environments. 5. Weakened immune surveillance. Your thick, sticky blood slows your immune cells. Early cancer cells slip through unnoticed. 6. Cancer risk increases. Mutations plus inflammation plus hypoxia create the perfect storm for tumor growth. Rouleau formation isn't just sticky blood. It's an invisible warning sign that can silently set the stage for serious disease, long before symptoms appear.
The rouleau formation is observed in patients with cancer, diabetes, infections, inflammation, and other serious conditions. This is a highly undesirable state of the blood, especially if it is persistent, as a result of long-term exposure to radiation, or EMF. Prolonged rouleau formation in the blood raises the risks of deadly strokes and heart attacks, and leads to the body generally underperforming. The M-guard breaks up the rouleau formation, and according to its official patent, can increase blood microcirculation up to 10 times, within 30 minutes of operation. This means that the M-guard offers amazing protection and incredible peace of mind.
A friend of mine was diabetic. He was actually pre-diabetic. And he told me that whenever he went into an environment that was electromagnetically polluted, that his blood sugar would rise. And I got all excited about this because measuring blood sugar is an objective way of documenting something. And so we began to work with diabetics, and we've published the research. I would like to suggest that there's another type of diabetes that has an environmental trigger, and that trigger is radiofrequency radiation in the form of dirty electricity. We published this research. Dirty electricity elevates blood sugar among electrically sensitive diabetics. So you can be diabetic and electrically sensitive, and if you are, you're going to have difficulty controlling your blood sugar. We published 4 different cases in this paper, and I'm just going to share with you one of them. This is a 57-year-old woman from New York, and she's a type 2 diabetic, doesn't take any medication, controls her blood sugar with diet and exercise. And what you see here is the plasma glucose levels. In Canada, we use millimoles. You use milligrams per deciliter, so I have them in both languages. And when she wants to control her blood sugar, she simply goes for a walk, 20-minute walk. And so this shows you her blood sugar before the walk and immediately after the walk. And ideally, you want to get it down to about 126, where that red line is. And these are on 3 different days. So you can see, irrespective of what her starting blood sugar is, she can get it down to a good, healthy level just by walking for 20 minutes. Now, on some days when, it's raining outside, or she just doesn't feel like going for a walk, she walks inside on a treadmill. And this is an example of what happens when she walks 3 different days to her blood sugar. So her blood sugar is actually going up despite the fact that she should be consuming the sugar because she's exercising. And so doctors who recommend that their patients exercise, and they don't really care if it's on a treadmill or outside, well, if that person is electrically sensitive, then they're doing a disservice to their body by walking on a treadmill. And the reason for that is treadmills produce dirty electricity and have a really high magnetic field. Now, if you answer yes to any of these questions, you might have type 3 diabetes. What can you do if you have type 3 diabetes? Well, you can have your home tested. You can minimize your exposure to electrosmog, and you can share the information with your doctor. We really do have to educate the medical profession, endocrinologists about this, because it's not something they learned in medical school. Last example I'm going to give you of electrohypersensitivity is with multiple sclerosis, and many of you know it's a neurological disorder that deals with sclerosis in the brain or central nervous system. And depending on what part of the brain is affected, the symptoms will vary from person to person. There was a school in Wisconsin that had sick building syndrome, and there were a number of kids who had asthma. Teachers complained about migraine headaches, and they were really very upset with the school environment, thinking there was something there that was making them sick. One summer, the school took their complaints seriously, because I think the union was going to take action if they didn't, and they cleaned up the school. They got rid of the mold, they cleaned up all the chemicals that they were using, they ripped out carpets, and the teachers and students came back, and they were still sick. So there was something else in that school that was causing a problem, and it turned out to be dirty electricity, and they called in an electrician who came in, measured it, cleaned up the problem. And what was really fascinating, there were something like 23 students in the school who had asthma, and they used their inhalers every single day at the school. And in that particular school, the school nurse kept the inhalers, so you would have to go in, sign in, and so she had a record of everyone who ever came in to use their own inhalers. And after the dirty electricity was cleaned up, these students stopped going for their daily inhalation to clear up their lungs and bronchi. And mothers would call in and say, does Johnny need an inhaler? Do I have to buy 2 of them, or is 1 sufficient? And the school nurse looked at her records and found that Johnny hadn't been coming in for several weeks to use his inhaler. He was still using it home in a dirty environment, dirty electromagnetic environment, but he no longer needed it at school. Now, the vice principal at that school had multiple sclerosis, and her symptoms, and she was so bad that she couldn't remember the name of her students after months of teaching them, and she had a class of about 30 or 25 students. And she just had all sorts of health problems, and she felt like she really had to quit teaching. She just couldn't do her job properly. After the dirty electricity was cleared up, her symptoms virtually disappeared. And she became incredibly enthusiastic about this and was trying to share the information with others. So I heard about this, and I started doing research with people who had MS. And this is a 27-year-old male who has primary progressive multiple sclerosis. We went to his home on November 24th and asked him to walk. He used a walker, and you can see the railing on the side of the wall there. His parents installed that so he can actually hold on to it when he walks. We put filters in, we cleaned up the dirty electricity, and he contacted me and told me, I'm really doing well. And I thought, well, I have to go see it. So I went and visited him, and we videotaped him 2 weeks later. Huge difference. And he was so proud of this. He was actually outside shoveling the snow. He was showing off when I arrived. Here's another woman, another person with this is secondary progressive MS. And when I was interviewing her, she was sitting on her hands. And I asked her why she was doing that. She says, well, my hands shake. So I asked if I could videotape them. This is on a loop, but basically she can't hold her hands straight. She can't feed herself. She couldn't go to the bathroom. Her mother took care of her during the day. Her husband took care of her at night. We put filters in. We cleaned up the dirty electricity, and this was 6 weeks later. and her mother told me that she could actually eat sandwiches on her own. So she improved enormously with no change in medication. So this is an example of how the environment can adversely affect your health. This is a person who had cleaned up his dirty electricity, and in 2001 he had a brain scan, and you can see the sclerosis here. And this is 7 years later, and the sclerosis is gone, or it's disappearing. When the doctors looked at this, when, he said, look, you doc, this is what I'm doing, are you interested? They said, no, we're not. And when they looked at the scans, they said, oh, we must have made a mistake. Like, I don't know how you can make a mistake in a scan like that. So you can see that there's much less sclerosis. So the body is able to heal itself. Now, the title of my talk was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So I'm going to now change to the ugly. What's really ugly about this? What's really ugly is the number of people, or the percentage of the population that's adversely affected. I think that between 3 and 5% of the population have severe electro-hypersensitivity, to the point where they couldn't be in this particular room because of the microwave radiation we have. And by the way, I have a little meter here, and it's showing you that the levels are red and amber, which is extremely high to high. It should be green on this particular scale. So there are things in this room that are exposing us to microwave radiation, and the people who are sensitive, who are sitting here in the audience, are unfortunately going to pay the price of not feeling well for a few hours to a few days after they go home. And that counts for about 3 to 5% of the population. I think probably 35% have mild to moderate symptoms. In Canada, we're talking about 1 million people who have severe electro-hypersensitivity. In the US, we're talking about close to 10 million people. Your population is greater than that now. When I first did the slide, it was lower. In Europe, we're talking about 15 million people. So what's really ugly about this are the number of people who are already adversely affected. What really bothers me is what we're doing to infants. Simply because you can doesn't mean you should. This is Chinese technology. They're producing diapers with chips in them, and when the chip becomes wet, it sends the mother's cell phone a message saying, change, baby's diaper. Totally frivolous type of technology. And, you're exposing that infant's entire body to microwave radiation. This is another one. This is a soother that has a thermometer inside the soother that sends information to the mother's cell phone telling the mother what the infant's temperature is. So you've got a baby at home that's not feeling well. You put this in their mouth, and you just simply walk around with your cell phone to find out, is the temperature going up or down? Now, we recommend that people not hold cell phones to their head because of the radiation. Can you imagine putting that cell phone in your mouth, in an infant's mouth? I mean, this is totally ludicrous, and this is really ugly. In North America, we have baby monitors, and parents who really care about their kids want to be aware of what the child is doing at all times, and so they put in these baby monitors. These baby monitors radiate 24/7. They're usually put close to the crib, so that infant is being irradiated all the time that baby monitor is turned on. In Europe, they have sound-activated baby monitors, which means there's no radiation. The infant cries, the monitor turns on, sends the information to the parent, turns off again. We tried to bring those baby monitors to North America, and we were told we couldn't. We tried to bring cordless phones that have the same technology to North America, and we were told we couldn't. And that's because the Federal Communication Commission prevents it from being brought here. And when you ask people who should know better why that is, they say it interferes with telecommunication. How can something that doesn't radiate interfere with telecommunication? So we're really, told a whole bunch of lies when it comes to this. What's really ugly is that we're going to 5G, and we're going to have a lot more radiation at a much higher frequency in front of, every third or fourth home, which is really ugly. And unfortunately, there have been absolutely no long-term health studies with respect to 5G technology. So we're exposing the entire population of the United States and of Canada, unfortunately, and we don't know what the consequences are going to be. This is in addition to all the technology we already have. So they're not going to take away the 4G or the 3G. They're simply going to add additional radiation. And my real concern is that we're going to have a massive increase in health effects, ranging from neurological disorders to cancer to reproductive problems.
Okay? And what can we do to protect our family? Besides MGuard, of course. First, time. We have to limit our time, right? Next, we have to create some distance to what we're doing, right? We also have barrier. And of course, one of the things that actually EMF do is raise free radicals, right? So you eat right, and you drink what? Because it decreases or removes or eliminates, neutralizes the free radicals. Okay, but how many of you agree with me that these things is not very possible anymore, right? What if you're working 10 hours a day? Can you limit your time? Can you put some distance? Do you want to walk with a barrier with you? No? But, of course, is there a better way? What do you think is a better way? You know the answer. Scientists, experts, they're debating if it is harmless, not harmless, whatever. I'd like to tell you, would you rather wait for these diseases to happen before you start protecting yourself? No. You don't wait, right? We have to start protecting our kids. Right now. Can you say right now? Right now. And how many of you here already have an MGuard at home? Good job. Great job. So many. So for those of you who doesn't have MGuard, you have two choices. How many choices? Two. First, go back without protection. Go back to your family knowing everything that you know, and then continue living. Continue doing everything, exposing your kids, or start protecting your family.
Doesn't matter to me. I feel fine. And then the next day, you might start not sleeping properly. You might start feeling anxiety or depression. We were at epidemic proportions of anxiety and depression even before this pandemic, as our electrosmog has grown. Other common early onset symptoms are headaches, migraines, nosebleeds, nausea, dizziness, pain from unidentified exposures, and then cognitive impairment is a big one. People can't remember what they were doing, where they were going, and as we age, that starts to happen naturally because, we're getting older, our systems are wearing down a bit. But now we see earlier and earlier onset of dementia and Alzheimer's. So we can't just sit here in this invisible electrosmog and expect that we're going to feel okay. Dr. Hugh Taylor, who runs the OBGYN program at Yale, he has done studies with rodents, and he has found that not only does it damage the DNA, but when you expose these pups in utero, oftentimes the mice come out as though they have ADD, ADHD, just bouncing off the walls of their cages. And the FCC was sued recently by the Environmental Health Trust and Children's Health Defense and others for ignoring all that body of science. And the courts held that the FCC was arbitrary and capricious in reaffirming their toxic wireless radiation exposure limits. And arbitrary and capricious basically means the FCC didn't do their homework. They just said, because we said so, That's why we're allowing this much radiation. So it is happening through the courts. And then the third thing is for public policy to catch up to the science.
It's back to the age-old saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
The government limits are 26 years old. The current standards for every one of the world's 8 billion phones and many more devices are 26 years old.
They were set in 1996. I would not want to fly in an airplane with 26-year-old safety standards, and yet our government has been asleep at the wheel. And government limits are a quarter of a century old.
The FCC, Federal Communications Commission, is a US government agency responsible for setting safety limits on radiation from electronic devices such as phones, Wi-Fi routers, and microwaves. Although it's an American regulator, the FCC standards are globally influential, as many countries either follow FCC rules or base their own safety guidelines on them. That makes the FCC a global reference for how much radiation is considered safe. Globally, devices that meet FCC radiation limits are often assumed to be safe. However, the FCC's integrity has come under scrutiny. Critics argue it operates as a captured agency, meaning it may no longer act independently, but instead serves the interests of powerful corporations, particularly in the telecommunications and wireless technology industries, such as mobile phone companies, internet providers, and tech manufacturers. For example, leadership positions at the FCC have been filled by former executives from these very industries, raising serious concerns about conflicts of interest and whether public health is truly being protected, or if profit and corporate convenience are being prioritized instead.
And the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals was so appalled by that when our organization sued and asked for an update of the standards, the court ruled that we had established the failure of the FCC to provide a record of reasoned decision-making. And the court ordered that the FCC had got to address the impacts of radiation in children.
And we have to recognize that the FCC is a captured agency, as this report from Harvard University now issued some time ago indicated. The FCC constantly rotating leaders from industry. And yet, while the court said you have to update your standards, nothing is happening. Nothing is happening.
Now, you often hear about how we have extensive literature on this issue, thousands of studies and thousands of studies. Well, that's actually not true.
I'm Dr. Deborah Davis from Pittsburgh Center for Environmental Oncology, and today I want to talk to you about why we know that cell phone signals are absorbed deeply into the brain. Studies have been done that have modeled how the phone gets into the brain. They've been done by the cell phone industry, and here's what we know. When you hold a phone up to your ear, you are, of course, exposing the hearing nerve, indicated here in this model of the skull. But we also know from other studies that have been done by the cell phone industry that the phone signals are absorbed very deeply into the brain, and you see here they're absorbed much more deeply into the head of a 5-year-old than they are into the head of an adult. But new studies from Sweden just released last week at the Royal Society by Professor Leonard Hardell, a distinguished oncologist from Sweden, have found that those who began using cell phones before age 20 have 5 times more brain cancer by the time they reach their late 20s. This is, of course, very worrisome. That is why we don't want to wait for more proof on this issue. We want to take simple precautions to reduce our exposure to cell phones while we continue to study the problem.
And there are many devices now, like this baby monitor, which says it should be at least 20 centimeters from all persons. Very few people know that. They put the monitor right next to the baby's head. This Lollipop smart baby camera is a disaster, in my opinion. There's no reason to have something like this so close to a baby.
Now, how many of you had heard that in 2011, the World Health Organization had reviewed all of the evidence and decided that mobile phone radiation was a possible human carcinogen? How many people had heard that? Okay. It's interesting that that information isn't more widely known, but the fact is the group that reviewed this evidence for the World Health Organization looked at all the evidence at the time in 2011. And At that time, they said it's important to conduct additional research and it's important to take pragmatic measures to reduce exposure. But we are not conducting additional research. And in fact, the World Health Organization itself is no longer conducting a leading study on brain cancer and mobile phones. Environmental Health Trust, the organization that I head, published an article in 2013 saying that we think that mobile phone radiation is a probable human carcinogen. And I want to show you briefly the reasons why we reached that conclusion. These are studies published since the World Health Organization IARC review in 2011. So these are newer studies. Here, Hardell from Sweden and Serenat from France. And what these are showing you is that the relative risk of developing brain cancer with more than 1,640 hours of lifetime use of a phone is almost 3 times higher compared to people who did not use mobile phones. In France, they were able to do it a little bit better, and they were able to get these data here. And interestingly, if people started to use phones regularly before age 20, as most of the world is doing now, there was 4 to 8 times more brain cancer after they had passed 10 years.
Stop wearing your AirPods. It truly is like wearing a mini microwave centimeters from your brain. And everyone should know that putting a microwave on your head is a horrible idea. Yes, the same frequency in this AirPod is the same frequency in a microwave, specifically because it's a bioactive frequency, 2.4 gigahertz. It's the most efficient and effective frequency to heat up your food. So when you have these mini microwaves in your head, it can have the same effect on your brain, tissues, and organs. Watch this. These AirPods are not connected to a device, but as soon as you open this cap, that dangerous frequency spikes. It's the same thing that's going to happen when you put them on your head. Oh, but the FCC says that level isn't strong enough. It's not like a microwave. BS. I seen this thing spike at 1,000 microwatts per meter squared. That means it can, in the literature, heat biological tissue. Armed with that knowledge, it's now up to you whether you want to use these mini microwaves and if it's worth the risk, especially now with research coming out showing strong correlations with brain tumors, brain fog, ADHD, and Alzheimer's, and other neurodegenerative conditions.
Watch this. Both AirPods and wireless headphones emit massive amounts of EMFs, massive amounts of radio frequency electromagnetic fields that are going straight through your brain and into your body for hours a day. Are these a problem? Are these a big deal? Well, there's been about 1,500 studies on EMFs coming from AirPods, your cell phone, wireless headphones, and the vast majority of these studies find these EMFs to be harmful to humans, creating DNA damage and oxidative stress. Not something you want pumping through your brain, pumping through your body, or you want right next to your crotch for hours a day. There's actually a study looking at human sperm showing that when human sperm are exposed to EMFs from cell phones, the sperm experience more DNA breaks and they have less motility.
Exactly how much radiation is coming out of these devices? Here I have with me a radiation detector, the RD9300. It is able to pick up the power density of the radiation. Now notice, anything above 200 is considered high levels of radiation. So let's turn it on. I'm going to put it next to the laptop, and as you can see, the reading is well above 200. These are for your laptops. Now I'm going to come over here to the tablets, which I use every single day. And here we have with me my phone. Let's take a look. Now just imagine the harm you could be doing to your body when you pick up the phone and you start talking on the phone while it's next to your ears. Wireless AirPods. The moment I put them onto my ears, let's check it out. Take a look at that. The reading coming off while it's being connected to my ears and to my phone is significantly high. I know that some of you have already decided to reduce the usage of these devices. But let me show you something. Now, in an environment like this, looking peaceful and balanced, however, there are actually still fundamental radiation that lurks around. We're going to be using another tool called the SDR app, which you can download on Android. Now, as you can see, Even though I am not in contact with any of my devices, this tool and the antenna is able to pick up the fundamental radiation in this environment. As you can see from the chart, I have tuned the app to 72 megahertz, the operating frequency of our brain. And take a look at the level of radiation. Just imagine, your body right now is constantly bombarded by these white noise. Now you understand why many people struggle to sleep well at night and having occasional headaches. But let's be real, in the world that we live in today, it is almost impossible to live without these devices. America's Federal Communication Commission, the FCC, has established limits on acceptable levels of EMR exposure. This is to safeguard the public health. Despite this, many electronic devices operate near or at these exposure limits, raising concerns about the cumulative effects of daily exposures in our life. Even if you can't touch, see, or even smell it, you need to know that EMR is always around. Now coming to the more exciting part, this is MGuard, right here. An environment harmonizer. I'm going to turn on the MGuard from the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Take a look at that. 2, 3. Take a look at that. Look at the screen now. The level of fundamental radiation has reduced drastically. Now with the MGuard turned on, let's get back to using my earpods. All right, it's on. And let's take a look. It shows 0. When it shows 0 on the radiation detector, you are in the harmonized zone of MGuard. It is as if you are turning your living environment into a sanctuary, giving your body and mind peace and serenity. MGuard offers an effective solution by suppressing external frequencies so that they do not disrupt our body's natural processes. The choice to protect yourself isn't just about preventing immediate threat. It's about investing in your future health and your loved ones. Now with MGuard, you're taking a proactive step towards a healthier life in our technology-driven world.
How many of you here wants to have children?
Sperm exposed to cell phone radiation died 3 times faster. The sperm exposed to cell phone radiation are sicker, they die faster, and there are fewer of them. So clearly, cell phone radiation damages sperm. And you can measure motility of sperm, how well they swim. And in terms of motility measurements, they found that, again, the sperm that were the poorest swimmers were those that were exposed to cell phone radiation. And there's a measure of vitality of mitochondria of DNA, which are the engines of the cell. The mitochondria is the engine that gives the cell energy to move, in the case of sperm. And mitochondrial DNA of sperm were also damaged 3 times more if they were exposed to cell phone radiation, indicated here and here. So clearly, cell phone radiation damages sperm. So many different studies have been done on sperm damage associated with mobile phone radiation that in the 7th edition of the textbook, Biostatistics in Medicine, Stanton Glantz concludes that the evidence linking mobile phone radiation to sperm damage is causal, meaning there clearly is a cause of damage to sperm from mobile phone radiation. Now, we have a lot of uncertainties in this field. The truth is, we have a lot of uncertainties, but not about sperm. There, the evidence has become rather strong, and it's become clear, so clear that the Indian government has issued warnings about this, that clinics that deal with reproductive problems are routinely advising young men to get those phones out of their pockets, recognizing that this is a hidden hazard to healthy reproduction. Now, another study was done at the Cleveland Clinic by Ashok Agarwal, a very distinguished expert in the field and the director of the Cleveland Clinic's infertility clinic. He noticed that men coming for treatment of infertility seem to be wearing, as I used to, a lot of these devices at their hips. And he did a simple cross-sectional survey, and he found that the men who used phones the most, or kept them in their pockets the longest, had the lowest sperm count. About half those who reported little use of cell phones.
And this is a report from the European Parliament in 2021 saying that EMFs are probably carcinogenic and that there are reproductive and developmental effects. Our government has been asleep at the switch, and we have to help wake it up.
In 2023, a study was done in the UK which showed a clear relation between the prostate cancer and radiation from a cell phone. There were over 400,000 people who took part in this study, and scientists came to a clear conclusion that using your cell phone or keeping it near yourself is very harmful, especially for men's health in terms of prostate. And as a result, prostate cancer has a significantly higher probability to be developed for those who often and regularly use and keep their phone near them.
The effect of electromagnetic fields on the human condition, even a couple of years ago, was already rated as a class 2B carcinogen. That means it's in the same category internationally as smoking, and it's for me not understandable that smoking is forbidden in schools, but schools bring in Wi-Fi that has the same cancer-causing index as smoking had. So we're being insane, but recent research shows that Wi-Fi, the microwave, penetrates the human body, the cells, and leads to great alterations of the proteome, the proteins that make the cells tick, make the cells work, the cell wall receptors. So about 1/7 of our total proteins in the body are either destroyed or altered by microwave. And this is a disaster for the future of the human race, because the most affected people are the fetus in the womb of the mother. Their brain and their physiology is permanently altered in not so good ways, so that we will see a decrease in overall intelligence and human health that already has begun dramatically in the last 20 years, but is accelerating at a huge pace. Ole Johansen of the Karolinska Institute showed a huge connection between the exposure to microwave and Alzheimer's disease. Current statistics shows that 50% of the people alive today in the West will either die with or from Alzheimer's disease. And knowing that the biggest contributor to that is the exposure to microwave, that makes it a non-sustainable, insane technology. I did a study that is not published because I couldn't get it published, that shows clearly a link when the mother during the pregnancy is exposed to a certain volume of microwave, like let's say the Wi-Fi router being not too far from her bed, and her using a cell phone, carrying it on the body, and having a cordless phone at home. Those are the three major exposures. That there's a direct link between the child that will be born developing autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders or not. So we measured the intensity of the radiation in the sleeping location, and then we're able to predict which child will become autistic and which one not, depending on the dose that the mother is exposed to. And
wow.
That's incredible. Not being able to publish a study like that makes you think.
Can I ask you why you weren't allowed to publish it?
The different medical journals that we proposed this to said we're currently not interested in this subject.
Okay.
Because of the huge amount of money involved and money gained in this industry, it's now estimated to be 5 times stronger financially than a pharmaceutical industry. And so basically every medical journal, every newspaper is dependent on monies that come from this industry. Every politician is dependent on monies that come from this industry. So there's no more political will to change anything. So we have to for now live with this until things get much worse.
There are a lot of studies that find nothing at all. Nothing. Why? Sponsored research, this is to put it politely, can induce publication bias. Another way to say this is that where you stand on an issue depends on where you sit and who's bought your chair. And there's a tremendous amount of sponsored research by people who are hired to do studies to find no effect. And that's plagued this field in a number of countries, including within the government itself. So I don't know about the details here with Arpanza, but I can tell you in the United States today, the gentleman who is directing the Federal Communications Commission, Tom Wheeler, was for 10 years the executive director of the Cell Phone Telecommunications Industry Association. And now he's in charge of regulating those devices. So it's challenging to have a neutral playing field under that circumstance. One example, the US Congress asked for a study of what needed to be done on mobile phone radiation in 1993, in 1998, in 2002, in 2012. That's how many times they've asked for that study to be done. So each time a study is done, and each time the conclusion is reached, we need more research. We need more research. Well, that's my bread and butter. Of course we need more research. But if instead of funding the research, all you're doing is calling for it, then it becomes a bit of a smokescreen. So that's part of our challenge on this issue. It's a lot easier to call for research than it is to carry it out. And I leave you with this thought from Albert Einstein. The world is not dangerous because of those who do harm, but because of those who look at it without doing anything.
What are the warning signs that we're being impacted by electromagnetic radiation?
Well, the earliest warning sign for exposure to microwave, one is the short-term memory loss, that the quality of one's memory goes down. But the major early sign is insomnia, disturbances of the sleep quality, waking up unrested in the morning, or not being able to go to sleep, or waking up typically at 3:30 at night and not being able to go back to sleep. Those are the more severe early signs, and then things go downhill from there. So first of all, we call these illnesses now chronic complex illness. They're becoming much more common, and usually when we interview patients that have seen a long list of practitioners, we find out that most of the patients have exhausted the physical level. They tried medical drugs, they tried vitamins, amino acids, minerals, and it hasn't worked, and then we need to look one level higher, which is usually the electromagnetic exposures. So we ask people carefully how much exposure they have at night and during the daytime to electromagnetic fields. I often make house calls myself still to go to people's homes and measure the microwave influence from the cell phone radiation, and often it's absolutely catastrophic what we find. And there's no way a patient's physical symptom can heal when the patient is exposed to an excessive amount of microwave, because it's inflammatory, it blocks your enzymes, your metabolic enzymes, it blocks your hormone production, it blocks your neurotransmitters. It's a disaster. I am Dietrich Klinghardt. I'm a medical doctor, and I've been in practice for almost 43 years now. And this little lecture is probably the most important lecture that I've ever given in my life. We have an onslaught of chronic illness in our time. The health span, the years that we spend in good health, is dramatically shortening every year. And the key cause of that are chronic neurological illnesses such as Alzheimer's disease in children, autism, learning problems, behavioral problems in children, ADHD. In adults, it's chronic fatigue, the fibromyalgia, the multiple sclerosis, ALS, Parkinson's, and so forth. In the 1980s, we thought we found a solution for it by diagnosing candida and other molds as the underlying cause of illnesses. Then we discovered in the 1990s that there is a deeper reason for the breakdown of the immune system, and looked at the herpes viruses, Epstein-Barr, herpes simplex, cytomegalovirus, herpes type 6, and so forth. And then in the early part of this century, through the work of some brilliant researchers, Frank Rossetti, Judy Mikovits, we found that the deeper cause of the illness are the human endogenous retroviruses. These are viruses deeply embedded in our DNA for probably millions of years, and they have been silenced by our different wonderful administrative mechanisms that we have in our cells. These retroviruses, once they're unleashed, once they start duplicating, cause symptoms very similar to AIDS. We refer to it as AIDS minor. People have chronic fatigue, they lose weight, they have food allergies, leaky gut, they have inflammation in the brain. It looks like the entire system is on fire. And when we look a little deeper, we find all the infections I mentioned before, but at the deepest level, we find the retroviruses. And now the search was on how to treat them, how to silence them again. What is unleashing them? Well, I can sum that up in one sentence. It's the exposure to Wi-Fi radiation, the electromagnetic fields that we're bathed in now that are ever increasing, has been shown to unleash the retroviruses. Also, a number of the environmental toxins have damaged our natural immune system, like the microbiome, the healthy bugs that live in us. Basically, we have created a situation where our immune system is no longer to even control its own endogenous pathogens that we're born with. And so our system is crying out for help.
When it comes to public policy, it's better to err on the side of preventing harm rather than proving danger. And we will have a further discussion about how the debate has often been framed as to, do we have the body count yet? And how the debate has been about brain cancer. Do we have enough proof of brain cancer? That's the wrong question. We are conducting an experiment right now on all of ourselves and our children, precisely because we do not have data on safety. It never was obtained. And rather than debating whether we have definitive proof of harm, we should be asking, is there sufficient evidence to consider that prudent precautionary policies are appropriate?
The American Cancer Society funded a study on thyroid cancer. And you can see here in this, you can imagine the direct exposure, particularly when the antennas were at the base of the phone, would occur into the thyroid, which is right here.
Where is the thyroid? Here. Where you heard about acoustic aroma? Here. The brain tumors we're concerned about? Here. They're all right within the flow of cell phone radiation.
Luo and colleagues at Yale University showed a doubled risk of thyroid cancer in those using phones for just 1 hour a day who carried a common single nucleotide excision, SNP, affecting DNA repair. And that doubled risk occurred in those with that SNP. Now, we're making great strides in understanding the role of SNPs in increasing proclivities to certain cancers. A number of other studies have linked cell phone radiation to other forms of cancer indicated here, including possibly rectal cancer and leukemia. And for rectal cancer, my colleagues and I have published a study showing a quadrupling of the risk of rectal cancer since 2010 in people under the age of 40.
What is our exposure in a day? It's not one cell phone. It's cell phones, it's multiple wireless networks, it's smart meters, it's cell towers. It's this sandwich, and it all adds up. And this is a serious problem for occupational health, public safety, and personal safety. And I feel that it's irresponsible to be even talking about the Internet of Things and rolling out a new untested technology when we're not even measuring what are our current exposures from the current networks.
I am telling you that cell phone radiation is a cause of breast cancer. It's not the only one. This is an image from the 21-year-old with multifocal tumors right under where the phone was kept in her bra. And you can see here, unfortunately, metastasis, right? The number of women in these professions have increased risks of breast cancer. We know it. All have multiple exposures to different chemicals. But now, in addition to that, you have to add the electromagnetic fields from the Vocera or other devices that young nurses are wearing often on their chests with no awareness that these devices have never been tested for safety and that they can accelerate breast cancer cell growth. Now we see phones where they say to meet the guidance of the FCC issues, which we believe is far too high, by the way, which is 26 years old, to meet that guidance, keep this device 1.5 centimeters off the body. Nobody knows this. And the industry is not campaigning to let people know about it. The Apple iPhone 13, it says 5 millimeters. But in fact, again, that's not enough. And we know young people are using these things in their bras, in their pants, in ways that are unhealthy and unsafe. And this report here.
This is why she argues phones should be tested the way we wear them. So what happens when they are? So the tests are all done.
Tests are all finished.
And
the number exceeded the limit. It went up significantly with each one of the phones.
that's right. The phones exceeded the safety limit when they were moved right against the body. The radiation absorbed increased 3 to 4 times.
Now, you would have thought that this report, this was done by the CBC in 2017, would have triggered major review by the Canadians of their safety limits. This fact that when phones are tested right next to the body, they exceed safety limits, has been repeatedly confirmed by CBC, by the French government's agency responsible for radiation evaluation, which we don't even have in the United States, and by the Chicago Sun-Times. And yet, there has been no pressure to change these standards. Cancer remains the tip of the iceberg because there are many other effects that have been associated with cell phone radiation. Of course, insomnia being one of the biggest, sperm damage is another.
That some of these devices are constantly emitting EMF radiation.
Like even when you're not using them.
Yeah. Like those always listening smart assistants, they're just sitting there waiting for a command, but they're still pumping out EMF. It's kind of freaky when you think about it.
We're talking about the same kind of radiation that's coming from our phones, laptops, Wi-Fi routers, and of course all those smart home gadgets.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
We have all these devices in our homes and on our bodies, constantly sending and receiving signals. It's a huge change from even a decade or two ago.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, just in my house alone, I've got smart speakers, a Wi-Fi router, a smart TV, streaming devices, wireless security cameras. I even have a smart doorbell. Oh, and then, of course, all the wearables like my smartwatch and my fitness tracker. It's kind of crazy when you stop and think about it. My house is basically one giant antenna.
And that's the thing, as we add more and more of these devices, our overall exposure to EMF just keeps going up and up. Bluetooth or Wi-Fi on your printer or that extra hotspot feature on your phone. Turning those things off when you don't need them can really help reduce your overall exposure.
These pulsations, this energy is disrupting the natural communications that exists in our bodies. all these exposures are additive in our lives. The smart meter, the cell phone, the Internet of Things, the iPad in your refrigerator to supposedly to tell you that you're running out of milk or you need to buy eggs. We don't really need that help. We are being dumbed down and we're outsourcing our memory.
So EMF radiation is basically energy that travels in waves.
What are people actually worried about when it comes to EMF in their smart homes?
Well, one of the big areas of concern is sleep. There's been some research that suggests that EMF exposure, especially close to bedtime, can interfere with your body's production of melatonin.
Melatonin?
Yeah. It's the hormone that regulates your sleep-wake cycle. Poor sleep can lead to all sorts of other problems, like mood swings, low energy, trouble focusing. It can even weaken your immune system. Some people say they experience more stress and fatigue when they're around a lot of wireless signals. They have headaches, they're irritable, they have trouble concentrating.
It's like having this invisible stressor that's always on.
Exactly. And then there's also some emerging research on the potential neurological effects of EMF. Well, some studies are suggesting that there might be a connection between prolonged EMF exposure and problems with memory and concentration.
Electromagnetic hypersensitivity. What is that?
Well, it's basically a condition where people say they experience a whole range of symptoms when they're exposed to electromagnetic fields.
Like what kind of symptoms?
Things like headaches, fatigue, dizziness. Some people get skin problems or they have trouble concentrating. It's called electromagnetic hypersensitivity, or EHS for short. But the thing is, there's no real test for it. And the symptoms can be pretty vague and they can be similar to other conditions too.
American College Health Association did a survey just a few years ago, 62,000 students at 92 schools, and they showed that 40% of college students today are depressed. And over 60% of college students today have had such incidences of anxiety over the past 12 months that they couldn't function. I can't tell you how many people whose homes I've gone into had terrible sleep problems, have had for years. And we show them the levels of the radiation, and I ask them to turn it off overnight, and they have their best night's sleep in 7 or 10 years, and this solved their problem. We need education. Education. And more people are starting to wake up and are considering this a health freedom issue. Our freedom to have sovereignty over our bodies and to not be forced to either eat something or take a drug or whatever, or be exposed to wireless radiation when it's dysregulating.
While a lot of mainstream health institutions cling to the idea that there's no clear link between EMF radiation and health, hundreds of independent scientists worldwide say the exact opposite. In their expert view, the thousands of available peer-reviewed studies on EMFs clearly demonstrate that our current exposure to EMF radiation is linked to a myriad of negative health effects. EMF safety guidelines haven't been updated since 1996 and are based on the very short-term exposure to one device, which is completely unrealistic considering how much we use technology these days. The link between EMFs and reduced fertility in men is very strong. That's why top fertility researchers at the Cleveland Clinic tell men to avoid keeping their phones in their pocket. Regardless of that fact, 67% of all Canadian adults do it every day. Since our bogus and outdated EMF safety guidelines do not protect adults, how can we expect them to protect children?
These days, more children than ever before are using mobile devices, and they're even getting exposed while in the womb. That means children today will spend a greater percentage of their lives connected to wireless technology, resulting in chronic exposure to EMF. Swedish studies say that using mobile phones regularly before age 20 will increase the risk by 400% of developing a glioma on the side of the brain where a cell phone is held. High levels of EMF exposure in children have been linked to autism, ADHD, headaches, and other neurological disorders. From the womb to adulthood, the earlier you can mitigate exposure to EMF radiation, the better.
It's until they invented the light bulb and electricity came that now man-made EMF started coming. And I think those were deemed to be safe until studies started seeing that, they do affect our biological system.
What I have here is an EMF detector. And what this does is measure magnetic, electric, and radio microwave frequencies. Essentially dangerous frequencies that are set off by electric devices that can cause sickness and disease, most especially like cancer. So we're going to measure a couple things in the kitchen. First thing we're going to measure is the microwave. So if we start the microwave, you can see here, just so you know how this works. At first, the magnetic is the most dangerous, so that's what we're going to check. So we set it to 0 to 3. When you get to 3, that's the red zone. That's considered the most dangerous. Anything that has magnetic range of past 3 is considered very dangerous. Once it gets to 3, you go to the top range, and that goes from 3 to 100. But right since 3, that's considered very dangerous. So we're going to start the microwave, see what happens. Okay, so immediately goes right to 3. So let's go to 0 to 100 range, and it's still way past 100. So obviously the closer the worse it is. So as we come further back, we'll see how far it stays past 100. This is considered extremely dangerous. Still is, as long as it's past 3, it's dangerous. We're all the way past there. Now getting closer, let's see when it stops. It's at 100. We're about 4.5 feet away right now. Immediately back to 0. So that's how dangerous the microwave. The microwave, just standing within about 4.5 to 5 feet of it, is dangerous for you because of all the magnetic rays that it has.
The infamous microwaves, yes, they produce a huge electromagnetic field. They're actually the same frequency range as Bluetooth, cordless phones. It's all the same frequency range except huge amounts of power. Right. And the distance, the safe distance from a microwave when it's on from the front is about 6 meters. I just would like to educate the public and say, hey, there's nothing happening. There is something happening. So understand that and change your time and your distance with it.
Now let's go see some other things in the kitchen. This is a refrigerator. So we have a new one and an old one. We're going to see what happens. So putting against it, it's right at the danger line. It's right at 3. The freezer gets a little bit worse. Now we have an old one here and it goes way up. So you can see the older models have a lot more magnetic frequencies. Now what's the point of knowing this about your refrigerator? So if you go to the back of your refrigerator and you look, what happens is it immediately goes all the way up past 100, just like the microwave. Now what's the importance of knowing this? Is where your refrigerator is located based on what's behind it is what's very important. So if we have this refrigerator right up against this wall and our bedroom with our bed is right against the other side, then we're going to be having this magnetic frequency going right into our head while we're sleeping. Other things you want to avoid are, this is a standard Mac laptop computer. So we put this on top, it immediately goes way off the charts past 100. Now what does that mean to you? These are something that people keep on their laps. So we look here, going back, as soon as I get within a couple inches of it, it goes way off the chart. Now remember, 3 is what's dangerous. We're all the way up past 100 when I touch it. So what does that mean? You don't want to put a laptop on your lap. That's why Apple is no longer calling these laptops. They're calling them personal computers. Because when you put this on the lap, you're having it right on top of your reproductive organs. Really bad place to do that. This is what you get when you keep the phone in your pocket.
Electric home appliances improve our lifestyle by making our lives easier. These devices entertain us, heat our food, cool our homes during the summer months, or heat the housing during the cold winter months. Domestic appliances help us to do tasks faster and easier. But these electrical appliances give off electromagnetic radiation. Your kitchen is a hotspot for toxic EMFs. Some domestic appliances like microwave ovens, Wi-Fi routers, cordless phones, laptops, cordless baby monitors and alarms. Bluetooth devices. Wireless refrigerator. Why do electric appliances emit EMF radiation? When you power on an electric device, the current runs through the device creating magnetic fields. The higher the current running through the device, the higher the frequency of magnetic field radiation. Also, the appliances have a lot of wires, circuit boards, power converters, and other electronic components. These components and wires emit EMF radiation whether turned on or off. Low-frequency radiation can also pass through the walls of your home. The majority of home appliances give off low-frequency radiation even when turned off or in standby mode. Unless you unplug the device from the power socket, the circuit board will continue to emit electromagnetic radiation. Building a smart home infrastructure increases the exposure of radiation in your home. The more wireless devices installed in your home, the higher the radiation exposure. The majority of smart home appliances emit RF radiation and Wi-Fi radiation. The TVs emit radiation through the circuit board, microprocessor, and power unit. Plasma screens and TVs are a source of electric pollution around your home. The latest models sold in today's market are smart TVs that includes wireless capability. Smart TVs connect via Wi-Fi and Bluetooth features that increase EMF exposure in your home since you can't turn off the wireless connectivity. Wireless functions in your smart TV emit high levels of radio frequency, RF, radiation. The screen also emits dirty electricity. If you want to reduce radiation exposure, make sure your TV doesn't have wireless connectivity. Just like the other home appliances, clothes dryers do give off a certain amount of EMF radiation. Mostly, magnetic field radiation is emitted from the circuitry and the control panel located at the top of the machine. The amount of radiation you're exposed to depends on how close you are to the machine. If you're within a short distance, i.e. 1 foot away, you're exposed to high levels of radiation. Due to this, it is recommended to stay away from the room when the dryer is running. Leaving your laundry room when the dryer is running is not enough, especially if your bed or couch is directly behind the wall where your dryer is. For this reason, you shouldn't place your bed or couch next to the wall where your dryer is placed. In advanced dryers, you can connect them to your smartphone and control them via the phone. Obviously, the more advanced clothes dryers have Wi-Fi capability and as a result they emit more EMF radiation. Blenders give off high-frequency magnetic field radiation through the electric motor when processing fruits. They emit invisible electric and magnetic energy that pose a lot of health risks to us. When you plug the blender into the power socket, it produces electric fields due to voltage generated. Once you turn it on, it emits magnetic fields as the current flows. Many of the electronic devices using electrical motors produce sinusoidal signals with frequencies of 50-60 Hz. This results in production of dirty electricity. When you power on the devices, they alter the waveform of low-frequency radiation. Hence, the radiation emitted today from the electrical appliances and the electricity cables is more aggravating. Dirty electricity emitted is associated with diabetes, multiple sclerosis, and attention deficit syndrome, ADD. Smart meters do emit radiation as they send energy data wirelessly to the utility provider. They emit short bursts of radio frequency waves when transmitting your electricity meter or gas readings remotely. A test done by Daniel Hirsch, a nuclear policy lecturer at UCSC, showed an intense pulse of RF radiation emitted more than 14,000 times in a day.
Often when considering the health effects of EMF in a home, the electricity cables that run round our homes are ignored. These rings of cable always give rise to higher magnetic fields, which are very dangerous. And the cables then radiate these high magnetic fields into the room and adjacent rooms, causing what we know to be an issue, body voltage, which, as we know, Klinghardt measured in pregnant women's beds and could accurately predict the likelihood of autism in the pregnant woman's child.
Do you know that in autism, in year 2000, there is one autistic child in every 150 normal child? Do you know that last year, the ratio is actually 1:36? And the autism actually rose from year 2000 to now by 317%. And EMF has been implicated in that.
Teslas are full of EMF, or any electric vehicle really, not just Teslas. Any electric vehicle is going to be very high in electromagnetic frequencies, more so than just regular ones. But these plug into your car, they help kind of mitigate and remediate any of those frequencies inside the car, because all of our cars have access to internet. We're all driving around 5G towers. The cars are metal. It's, I was getting so tired in my car when I would drive. Like, I wouldn't even be able to drive for longer than 20 minutes. I would get very fatigued.
I think the most important study is a study by the National Toxicology Program in a classic large carcinogenicity test, one of the largest ever performed, and for that matter, one of the most expensive. They found increased risk of the tumors, which we believe radiofrequency radiation is causing in man. Particular tumors called schwannomas. In the rats, they were in the heart. In humans, they're often in the nerve, the ear nerve, the vestibular nerve.
At this point, the evidence has become sufficiently strong that cell phone radiation is a human carcinogen.
A major development from California's Department of Public Health. High use of cell phones may be linked to certain types of cancer and other health effects, including brain cancer and tumors, lower sperm counts, headaches, and effects on learning, memory, hearing, behavior, and sleep.
Radiation is harmful, but few want to believe it. That is the word from a UC Berkeley researcher who's drawn a strong link here between cell phone radiation and tumors, particularly in the brain. Now, researchers took a comprehensive look at stats from 46 different studies from around the world, and it found the use of cell phones for more than 1,000 hours, or about 17 minutes a day over a 10-year period, increased the risk of tumors by 60%. Joel Moskowitz conducted that study. He is a researcher at Cal's School of Public Health and director of Berkeley's Center for Family and Community Health. Thank you so much for joining us. What exactly in the cell phone did your research find that is causing cancer?
It's the microwave radiation coupled with low frequency pulsing that is likely the cause of the brain tumor risk, as well as other tumor risk. And since our study was completed, there's been 2 studies out of Yale that showed increased risk of thyroid cancer among individuals who are heavy cell phone users.
And why
that's 1,000 hours or more of call time increased the risk significantly, which amounts to, as you said, only about 17 minutes per day on average.
So you're saying when you hold the cell phone up to your head, it is causing these cancer tumors in certain parts of your head?
Correct. Either the head or the neck is at risk when you hold it next to your head. If you hold it near your breast is at risk, and if you hold it near your genitals are at risk.
And so we often, I have 2 cell phones, a personal cell phone and a work cell phone, and I keep them in my pocket. What are your thoughts about that? Is that also, does that also pose a danger?
It does pose a danger in terms of reproductive harm and potentially risk to the genitals. So we recommend that you keep the cell phone off your body. Well, my findings coincide with over 200 scientists who have published over 2,000 papers on electromagnetic fields and biology or health, who have signed the International Email Scientist Appeal, all of whom find that low-intensity cell phone radiation or wireless radiation or power line frequencies cause various health risks, including tumor risk. And all have called for much stronger regulation from the FCC, the regulatory body in the U.S., as well as in other countries. They've contested the radio frequency limits in those countries as well. The FDA is really a case of the blind leading the blind, or the blind leading the blinded. The telecom industry is extremely powerful in Washington and spends over $100 million a year lobbying just in D.C.
So let's talk about that. Your report, you purport that the federal government is not doing any real research into the subject. Why is that? And based on your findings, isn't a government study really needed with urgency?
Well, since the 90s, when largely the U.S., the Congress cut off the funding of the EPA, which was doing cutting-edge research finding genotoxic effects, the U.S. has only funded one major study, which was finally completed in 2018, which found clear evidence of cancer risk from cell phone radiation in the male rats. Immediately, the FDA dismissed the study and said it's not relevant to humans, which is absurd because almost all the toxicology studies the FDA relies upon is done on animal models, especially rats.
The California Department of Public Health is warning that people who keep their cell phones within arm's reach while they sleep could be at an increased risk of cancer, infertility, and other health issues.
If cell phones were a drug, they would be illegal because they've never been tested for safety and there's no monitoring or surveillance for their impact right now. Dr. Nora Volkoff is a psychiatrist and a PhD who's the director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse. She produced a stunning study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. That study took an image of the brain when it was just doing nothing at all, and then it took an image of the brain 50 minutes after a cell phone was turned on next to the brain. There was no sound, it was just turned on. That study found a statistically significant alteration in brain metabolism of glucose. Glucose is the main fuel of the brain. You need glucose when you're thinking. What is the impact on the brain of the lifetime of having increased glucose in the brain from cell phone radiation? We know that diseases like Alzheimer's occur and you have basically too much sugar in the brain. We don't know whether cell phones could possibly be contributing to it, but there are a number of researchers who are quite concerned about this. The beauty of Volkoff's study was that she used an actual cell phone under experimental conditions where the persons being exposed were unaware whether the phone was turned on, looking for a signal from the tower or not. And there's no refutation of her work. The issue is, what does it mean? The long-term consequences of repeatedly increasing glucose in the brain is something nobody knows.
Right. Doesn't sound like a good thing.
It will accelerate cell growth,
yes.
And it will, if there are cells that have already been primed to be abnormal, it will accelerate those as well.
Now, this is a study recently done by this is showing you that those who reported using their phones for 4 to 5 minutes before night sleep had more than 3 times the rate of breast cancer as those who did not report that. And that those who reported using their phones more than 4.5 minutes before night sleep had almost 7 times more breast cancer. Now, this is a case-controlled study. It's a small study with only 200 people. One has to know that this study did adjust for family history, and it did adjust for where the phone was being kept. But I would think that this should be a wake-up call, and that more people should become aware that using your phone before you go to sleep not only interferes with sleep, but increases your risk of breast cancer, according to this study, as much as 7-fold. Now, we have modeled with our colleagues in Brazil the exposure that goes to the chest just from holding your phone like this. And you see here on this figure, watch the simulation I'm going to show you here. The red is moving into the chest with a cell phone held to the chest. This was developed by Professor Claudio Fernandez for us. And if you just hold your phone that close, and that's the way many people hold it, you're getting exposure into the breast.
Because we are seeing women who keep cell phones in their bras. Has anyone seen a woman put a cell phone in her bra? Hands up, please. Please tell them you've heard now why they shouldn't do that. And here I want to show you our first case report from 2009, and we now have many more. This was a Chinese-American woman who used her cell phone 4 hours a day in her bra for 10 years while she was driving. Now, and you drive with a phone on your body. The phone is smart. It's going to go from one tower to another, and it's going to say, here I am, where are you, here I am. And it's going to be going to max power each time it moves from one cell tower to another. And there it was right next to her chest. And the tumors that developed right under the antenna of the phone. And here, unfortunately, this is an MRI of a young woman, a very brave young woman named Tiffany Framps. When she was 21, she's now 22, she developed metastatic breast cancer. This is metastases into her chest wall right here. And this outlined the phone. And it was subcutaneous, so it's like right under the surface of the skin. It was not
deep within the breast. Most breast cancer occurs in women over 50. It occurs in the upper outer quadrant. These tumors occurred right under the antenna of the phone. And now we have 38 of them. Not a single one of them has a family history. None of them has inherited the defects that we know increase the risk of breast cancer. They have multifocal tumors. That means they have more than one tumor, and the tumors are located under the antenna, sometimes just right in the center of the chest.
Alarm about a possible link between breast cancer and cell phones.
It's convenient, say many young women.
It's probably the most convenient place to put it, especially when you go out. You know, you put your money on one breast and your phone on the other.
Maybe they should talk to Tiffany France.
I put my cell phone right in my bra.
Tiffany got breast cancer at 21.
And it just so happened her tumors were exactly where her cell phone had been against her skin, her bare skin, for about 6 years.
With no genetic or any other risk factors, surgeons removed Tiffany's left breast.
It's kind of coincidental that it is right where I kept my cell phone.
Coincidence? Donna James also got breast cancer at 39. Also no risk factors. The dots here are where tumors developed. Her doctor said it was an unusual distribution, exactly matching her cell phone. This image shows the tumors were just under the surface of her skin.
All in this area right here, which is where I tucked my cell phone.
James says she did that for 10 years. She had a mastectomy.
Yeah, I thought cell phones were safe.
Breast cancer specialists are now sounding a warning. They say men are also getting breast cancer under cell phones in shirt pockets.
Tiffany France underwent a mastectomy and 6 weeks of radiation. The treatment ended on August 21st when she rang the bell at Johns Hopkins Hospital, but the cancer has spread.
I have my whole life ahead of me, so it's not easy at all.
Don't keep your cell phone on your body.
One of her patients currently battling breast cancer developed cancer in the exact spot she carried her cell phone. The reality is companies are catering to the convenience. Some athletic lines now offer sports bras with built-in side pockets to place your cell phone.
I did not think that this was going to work. But here's how I did it. First, you only get 4 iPhones and a popcorn kernel. You can then call the opposing phones just like that, and now we watch.
When I first heard that there might be something wrong with cell phones and health, about maybe 9.5 years ago, I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it, and I owned 3 phones. And I was one of those people, you know, that walked around kind of like a gunslinger. I had 2 of them. Actually, I had 3. Don't ask me why. I was directing a program then of a couple dozen scientists, and I was pretty obnoxious. I wanted everybody to be able to answer me right away and had people be wired in through the wireless radio frequency radiation. So when I first looked into the problem and I heard there could be an issue, I dismissed it entirely. After all, I said, if there was a problem, I'd know about it. You see, I'm a scientist, and I worked at the U.S. National Academy of Sciences with the best scientists in the world, and I did. And I figured if there was really a problem, I would have heard about it. I worked for President Clinton, and I was a political appointee. So I remembered that we set up some kind of study at the time, and I learned later, as I document in my book, that that study was a bit of a sham, all $27 million of it, and that we really had very little research on cell phone safety. Most people do not realize that a cell phone is a two-way microwave radio. Radio frequency energy is the term the cell phone industry likes to use to describe what comes out of a cell phone. But there's another phrase that describes it just as well, and that is microwave radiation. A cell phone is a two-way microwave radio.
The microwave oven, the mobile phone, the cordless phone, the Wi-Fi monitor, the baby monitor, they all use the same frequency. They differ in power. They also differ because mobile phones and Wi-Fi devices emit pulsed microwave radiation. It's the pulse, not the power, that appears to be biologically most important. The pulse that is erratic and irregular, like for thousands of minutes a month, for dozens of hours a week. Over a lifetime, that irregular pulsed signal may be much more biologically important.
And microwave radiation is the radiation that can damage us not by breaking DNA bonds and not by its weak power, because it is weak. And that's what I thought when I dismissed this totally. Microwave radiation in an oven uses 2.4 billion cycles a second at 1,000 watts of power to cook a cup of water in 1 minute. Microwave radiation from a cell phone could use up to 2.4 billion cycles a second at less than 1 watt of power. And I believed, as many scientists still do today, that because the power was so weak, the fact that the signal was the same frequency meant it had no biological effect. That belief, it's like a religious conviction among some physicists, is in fact not correct, and I'm going to explain to you why. Cell phones emit pulsed microwave radiation. It's the pulsed nature of the signal that is problematic. It has nothing to do with the power. The erratic pulsed nature of the signal from a cell phone that allows it to go up and down and give you information may be why it's so problematic biologically.
And that the power of the cell phone, which is indeed weak, is not its most biologically important characteristic. Rather, it is its disruptive nature, the fact that the cell signal can be very erratic, that it goes on and off. If you think of yourself riding in a bus or an airplane, it's vibrating, resonating, and you can read. But if it suddenly stops or lurches or turns, it disturbs your normal balance. And that is what we think may be going on to cause a stress response within your proteins and genes that then produces a cascade of harmful agents throughout the body. This is just to show you what happens in a 4-second mobile phone call. This is power density indicated here. And of course, a phone is on standby, it's not doing too much, but 900 times a minute, it's looking for a signal. It says to the tower, where are you? Here I am. Where are you? Here I am. It's smart. That's how it's supposed to do. Now, when the phone rings, the worst time for you to put a phone right next to your head is when you answer it and say hello, because it's smart and it goes to max power. They're programmed to do that. Max power. Now, it's going to go to max power. You're going to listen, and then it will go up and down and up and down. And again, it's that variation, it's the delta, it's the cumulative integrative dose under the curve over a lifetime of exposure that looks to be biologically important. Let's go back to almost 20 years ago when standards for cell phones were first set up. At that time, it was believed that the only thing you had to worry about was avoiding heat. That was the only effect you had to be concerned about. And so they employed the head of a very large person, a 220-pound male, who was at the top 98th percentile of military recruits in 1989 in the United States. And they set the standards to avoid heating up that fellow's brain after a 6-minute phone call.
And I document in my book, Disconnect, the actual studies were done, I'm not making this up, on rats that had been deprived of food and trained to run a maze in order to get food. And they put thermometers in the rectums of the rats, and they determined how hot the rat had to get to be hungry and not try to get food. And based on that, they extrapolated to human effects. So the standards have not been changed for 17 years. Yesterday in San Francisco, Tom Wheeler, who is now the head of the Federal Communications Commission, had a very rude experience at the Commonwealth Club where several people interrupted his talk to ask him what he was going to do about cell phone standards, because he's the head of the FCC now, appointed by President Obama. But you see, for 10 years, he was the head of the Cell Phone Industry Association when they did the $27 million study that found nothing. Now, cell phone standards, as I said, were developed to avoid heating a heavy-set man, not a young child. And you see here the difference in scale of the child versus the man, the point being that the cell phone radiation reaches a larger proportion of the brain of a child, but also, according to studies conducted by the cell phone industry in France and in Switzerland, children's skull bone absorbs 10 times more radiation than adults. Why is this the case? A child's skull is thinner. The thinner the skull, the greater the radiation. A child's brain contains more fluid. The more fluid in an object, the faster it heats up in the microwave oven or anywhere else. Now, much of the energy from cell phone is absorbed by the brain cells in the frontal or temporal lobes. These are modeling done from our colleagues in Athens, Lucas Margaritis. These are data from Om Gandhi, who worked for years for Motorola. That work with Motorola ended the year he published these data, showing a very simple calculation that a child, a 5-year-old, could absorb twice as much radiation as an adult.
And after he published this, he lost all his funding.
These are other data that he published, no longer working for Motorola, showing that the smaller the head, the greater the absorption of radiation.
You see, the amount of exposure is quite similar, but because the head is smaller, it will absorb proportionally more.
No surprise here, it makes sense. And yet, the size of the head, for which all of the world's 6.5 billion cell phones are set today, is that of a man who was over 6 feet tall and weighing well over 200 pounds. Much larger than the average person in India or the average young child in the world today, many of whom are using cell phones.
But based on this work and other studies that have been done around the world, the United States magazine Consumer Reports recently recommended that nobody keep a phone in their pocket. Nobody. And in fact, if phones were tested in pockets, they would exceed the as-tested exposure guidelines, which is why Telstra has recently issued that advice. Believe it or not, this is the iPotty. Now, this is not a joke. A lot of people today take devices into the bathroom all the time, but there are actually young children who will not go to the potty without their iPad. Does anybody know anybody like that? Any kids? Yes. Is that amazing? And nobody's even thinking about this as what it might mean for radiation exposure. And Parent Magazine called the iPad the best babysitter. I mean, if you need an iPad for a babysitter, you need to rethink having children. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which we'll hear from Dr. Taylor about, recommends that children under age 2 have limited to no screen time. And yet the companies are busy producing potty seats and baby bouncer chairs that can hold iPads right in front of the developing brain. If you must give a young child such a device, and I would encourage you not to, but if you must, please put it on airplane mode. Please make sure it's not sending the signal back and forth to Wi-Fi while a child is playing with it. It's a bad idea. This is not a good idea for developing brains.
These are actually, we called it in 1940, 1950s, an X-ray, wherein they fit the children's feet are put there to do an X-ray so they can fit the shoe. It actually says here, this is actually a marketing material. It says, there's no guesswork. When fitting shoes at Sears, use X-ray for shoe fitting. It's dangerous to have your child's shoes fitted in any other way. Are you scared for those kids? Yeah, but they didn't know that. But remember, 1930s, Marie Curie died. 1920s radio girls were there. But why is it that they are still fitting the shoes of these kids in 1950s? Right? Why am I telling you this? Can you ask me why? Why? Because we have to learn from history.
And that the real consequences of these exposures might be seen decades from now.
What if the greatest threat to your health wasn't a virus, a chemical, or even a weapon, but the very technology you use to live, work, and connect every day? In an age where convenience reigns and connection is king, a new enemy has risen. An invisible predator now saturates our homes, our schools, our hospitals, and even the very cribs of our newborns. This predator is electromagnetic radiation, and it is the new silent killer. It is silent not because it is weak, but because it is stealthy. It doesn't kill like a bullet, it erodes like a tide. It's all around us, in our phones, our Wi-Fi, our smart devices, and all our electrical equipment. Electromagnetic radiation now bathes us 24/7. And it's not as harmless as they say. It slowly corrodes, disrupting sleep, damaging DNA, weakening immunity, hijacking the brain, and quietly sowing the seeds of chronic disease. This is a slow killer, not like a car crash, but like rust, eating you from the inside out. They told us cigarettes were safe. They said asbestos was fine. Now they're saying the emitted electromagnetic radiation is within limits. But it infiltrates, it accumulates. It vibrates your cells at frequencies they were never designed to withstand. It disrupts calcium signaling in the brain. It shatters the integrity of the blood-brain barrier. It mimics cellular frequencies, but sows chaos instead of life. Oxidative stress, mitochondrial damage, sleep disorders, infertility, neurodevelopmental disorders in children, and in some cases, the seeds of cancer. And what's most terrifying? You cannot see it, you cannot smell it, you cannot hear it, but your cells feel it. Your body knows. We have been seduced by speed, fooled by wireless luxuries, addicted to digital lifelines. And now, like frogs in a pot that's slowly boiling, we are cooking in a bath of invisible frequencies. Frequencies that pierce tissue, alter rhythms, and corrode resilience over time. This is not conspiracy. This is not science fiction. It is science silenced. We are swimming in a sea of artificial frequencies, pulsing through our walls, into our organs, and honestly into the brains of our children. This is peer-reviewed, ignored, and buried under profit margins. Just like asbestos, lead, and tobacco before it, the danger was denied and silenced. But this time, we simply cannot afford to be silenced. Electromagnetic radiation is the new silent killer. This is the danger of our generation. And you know, by the time we see it, it may be too late. The question is no longer if it's harming us, but how much longer we'll pretend it isn't.